Well, you did a great introduction, Vito. I think, Fahad, how are you doing today? Good to catch up again.
Yeah, good. I was nervous about making it through with Zoom.
I
So
thought, yeah, it worked very smoothly.
yeah,
But I'll tell you, just diving right into it. My name is Beth Freistack. I'm the SVP of Client Strategy here at Data Axle. And I, like Tim just mentioned, have been in the business for quite a long time. And I started in this business pre-digital, pre I'll just say in the old traditional world of marketing. And honestly, over the past 20 years, have seen some of the greatest changes in the business and things, honestly, that have transformed a business to something I'd never see today. Uh, Fahad, I'm going to let you do a quick introduction of yourself. And can you tell us just a little bit about what you do with TD and what your role is?
yeah. Thanks for having me. Really excited about this conversation. I lead the marketing strategy and acquisition at TD with a focus on personal investing and saving products. So a number of different roles across the financial services industry with small business banking, with global brand, as well as the CPG industry. And yeah, like I said, super excited about this conversation.
Fantastic. I know that our goal here, and one of the things that we want to talk about, it was mentioned in earlier in Tim's kickoff, which was great about omni-channel. And I know, can you tell me the role of omni-channel marketing in winning customers, or how does omni-channel help your business boost customer acquisition at TD Bank?
Yeah, you know what? As Tim was going through his slides, I felt like he kind of stole my thunder because that's what we're going to talk about. But yeah, in its simple, in a more simple form, the way we see omni-channel marketing, it really means making it easy for your customer by delivering a message that takes into account their full journey, right? So it's really about ensuring that not only does your campaign use all types of channels and tactics to reach your audience, but it's also about making sure that your message is it's orchestrated in a way across all of these tactics that the customer interacts with in their journey. And there's a nuance here, and I'm glad Tim touched on it as well. When you compare Omni with multi-channel marketing, and
Mm.
at we've sort of made a conscious effort to stop using Omni and multi because interchangeably, because I've been guilty of doing that in the past as well, because multi-channel uses unique strengths of specific marketing channels to grow your reach, right? And usually what ends up happening is that there is a lack of cohesiveness, and too often these channels end up competing with each other, which is what an omni-channel marketing strategy ensures that it doesn't happen. So to sort of round it out and go back to you, the second part of your question, Beth, the reason why omni-channel marketing is critical in driving acquisition is because it ensures that that customer experience remains consistent across all the channels, and these channels feed off each other as well, so we can acquire customers more efficiently.
So, how has the pandemic changed, kind of switching topics, how you've approached customer acquisition in general? And, you know, have you shifted completely away from traditional marketing? And does omni-channel include that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So let's tackle both of them separately, right? Which is
Yeah.
how has the pandemic changed how we've approached customer acquisition, um, and then we can talk about traditional and sort of the evolution towards digital. If there's one thing that we all agree on, is the fact that the pandemic has kind of brought forward the digitization that we were on by at least a decade, right? Uh, so what does that mean as for us as acquisition marketers? It really means that the consumer is more acquainted with digital channels than any time in human history. And for us at TD, this had a significant impact on our omni-channel marketing strategy, and how we're acquiring customers. And then I'll sort of focus on two key pivots that we've had to make because of the pandemic over the last couple of years.
Mm.
The first one's it's sort of more concentrated bets on a few main paid advertising channels, because what we've seen is it's not just Facebook and Google ads anymore. We've seen a rapidly increasing penetration of TikTok, Pinterest, LinkedIn, Twitch. And compared to a few years ago, these aren't just channels that are rounding errors in terms of their usage, right? Compared to traditional marketing channels or even compared to Facebook and Google. And what we've learned is that it's not going to do us any good if we just focus on the usual suspects, the Googles and the Facebooks and Instagrams by default. Instead, what we said is we'll identify where our target audience is hanging and then focus most of our efforts in terms of advertising on those highly concentrated bets. And with each campaign, we'll set aside 15% of our budget to test our way into a new digital channel. Right? So if I use, and if it works, we'll embed it in our marketing strategy going forward. If not, let's move on to the next channel test with our campaigns. So for example, we're in the process of launching a campaign in market where we're testing Twitch creators to deliver our content in a way that's native to that platform. So that's one pivot. The second one's, audio has arguably been the rising star of the pandemic, right? So
Mhm.
podcasts, for example, they were gaining popularity beforehand, but since the pandemic, they've become a crucial cog in a brand's marketing mix, right? So we have research that shows that consumers they've consumed more audio content since 2021, so 2 years, than all of the audio content that they've consumed over the last 10 to 15 years. And it's proved to be a fantastic channel to help me and my team drive that top of the funnel awareness, uh, especially the line of business that I lead, which is savings and investing products, where having presence in this space has enabled us to become thought leaders, right? So consumers can come in, consume content, focus on advice and savings and so on. And once they've done that, we can also retarget them through our other digital channels with sort of acquisition focused messaging.
So what are your favorite podcasts that you listen to, Fahad? And
Oh,
and you're part of that strategy, yes?
I wasn't expecting that question, Beth. You've caught me off guard. No, I'm joking. Um, for me, I think I love talk shows. So I
Mhm.
watch, sorry, I listen to Conan, I listen to Armchair Expert by
Mhm.
Jack Shepard. I don't know if anyone or yourself have listened to those, but I find it so interesting how the same, Conan O'Brien, like he's been doing his thing for the last 30 years, right? But
Yes.
it's so interesting to see him sort of evolve from a talk show host where you just had to fit everything in those 10 minutes to a long form podcast show that he really gets a chance to go deep and have really insightful conversations. So it's really interesting how that sort of how the medium has evolved his personality and messaging as well.
So are you still using traditional marketing in a sense? How's that changed?
Yeah, so I think it just depends on the campaign and sort of the overall scale and objectives that we want to reach. But the rule of thumb is traditional, at some point in time, we will completely move off of traditional. I really believe that. But I think it'll take some time for us to get there. And for now, if we have an objective for a campaign where we want to drive mass awareness, we do still focus on traditional, but we make sure there's two things, right? One, we focus on specific events which we can um, get through digital. So, for example, the World Cup, right? So we got some spots made for our campaigns for the FIFA World Cup that's going on right now, because traditional
Mhm.
TV still has that opportunity to sort of tap into mass awareness for specific events. And two, we try to make sure that whatever we're putting out on our digital campaigns is sort of aligned with what we're putting out in our mass TV as well. So to answer your question, traditional still has a role to play, but it's focused more on specific events that give us that reach and help us drive awareness, and two, making sure that what we're doing on digital is in line with what we do with traditional.
So you mentioned Facebook, you mentioned Google, you mentioned Twitch, you mentioned podcasts. So uh lots that happens in omnichannel. So what are some key components of omnichannel marketing? Like just holistically, what are some key components of your omni marketing channel strategy? And then how has that helped you drive success for TD?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and maybe I can focus on. There's so much that goes into it, but maybe I'll focus on three things that have really helped us, that we've had to learn our way, into campaigns. The
Mm-hmm.
first one is making sure that we're developing message that breaks through with the audience, right? And making sure we're identifying the right channel to deliver this. So we just talked about podcasts, for example, right? So if we want to deliver breakthrough content that's focused on advice, podcast is a great medium for that. So making sure that we're creating breakthrough content, and it's sort of delivered on the right channel.
Mm-hmm.
The second one's making sure that there is meaningful personalization where you reach customers at key moments of their journey to deliver relevant and timely messages for them, right? I think I can't remember the last time we used sort of that mindset that we had before, which is, if this is a consumer I want to target, I'll just focus on their age, gender, location, and so on. Like we haven't done that in so long.
Right.
Instead, what we try to focus on is, building personas based on our first party as well as third party data, and then sort of aligning them with our objectives so we can target them more in a way that's more personalized and it's more efficient as well. And the third piece is just the orchestration across channels. And we talked about this with the traditional and digital sort of spaces, which is ensuring that the messages on both of these platforms or sort of channels are aligned and orchestrated so that the customer hears one cohesive voice throughout.
So you mentioned, I'm going to kind of go back. I have a little question for each one of those. On breakthrough messaging that you talk about, do you see that as solely creative? Is that across all channels? Is that a tagline? What do you see as breakthrough messaging, and how do you define that?
Yeah, I think one, it's the baseline assumption is that your messaging has to go, if it needs to break through, it has to go beyond just creative adaptation and linkage with the brand. So let's get it out. That's a given, and that's not enough to create breakthrough messaging. It also means that, so going back to the persona piece, it means developing strong personas that's rooted in insights and sort of creating messaging that resonates with each of those personas. So to give you an example, I don't know if your audience knows, but I'm based out of Toronto, and we're focused on personal savings and investing products in the Canadian market. For us, a huge source of growth from a consumer perspective is new Canadians, so new to Canada. So in this instance, um, sorry, I got distracted by a question. So in this instance, the messaging that I'll sort of send out for the new to Canada segment would be fundamentally different, right? Because that
Mm-hmm.
the needs that customer segment has are more about financial education and help them settle in their new home and so on. So creating that persona based on specific insights, and then two, creating messaging that really is sort of in line with their specific needs. And like I said, the new to Canada is one example that where we create that breakthrough messaging. And the last piece is also making sure that this was a bit too tactical, but when we're making digital ads, for example,
Mm-hmm.
creating flexible design that allows for personalization and optimization, right? So for example, if we're building creatives, gone are the days where we'd have just one creative for each. And
Yes.
it's identifying as, even if it's search marketing, right? So identifying a variation of search ads that can be shown to different audiences based on what they're looking for. So that flexible design is important as well.
So personalization data, I hear these a lot in the financial sector. And Data Axle, as you know, we're a third-party data provider and compiler. Um, how much of and how important do you lean today on first-party data versus third-party data? I know that first is the way of the future, but how much do you lean on third-party data providers in order to enrich your strategy?
Yeah, I think what you just said is spot on, which is first party data is the future. Especially, I think it was a breakthrough moment for most marketers maybe 2 or 3 years ago when Apple sort of shifted their um, cookie policy with the new iOS, um,
Mhm.
which means I'm sure most people
Mm.
would be aware of that. So third party, so I think it's going to be a transition. So similar to how we talked about traditional to digital, it's going to be, so we kind of can see the end destination, which is, successful integration and leveraging of first party data, but it's going to be a transition until we get there. And for us to be successfully leveraging or sort of creating cohesive experiences for customers, going back to what omnichannel is all about, it is important that we leverage both the data that we have, especially from a financial services perspective. We have so much information about our customers, right?
Mhm.
So making sure that, for example, if we're creating personas, we're leveraging that first party data that we have access to, but then also working with our partners to sort of um, combine it with the insights that they have from a third party data perspective.
So talking about kind of the merging of those two, first party, obviously a lot of information at the bank, about your customers, understandably, and third party data, enriching that. How have you leveraged data and analytics? You mentioned personas, so I'd like to kind of dive in a little bit on personas and how have you utilized that to help create that cohesive experience across the omni-channel strategy you build?
Yeah. So I can use an example that has really worked well for us. So if we just take a step back and see sort of what's my objective for personal savings and investing products, it
Mhm.
is get customers who's sitting on cash, especially during the pandemic. It's the same in the US, but Canadians are sitting at record levels of cash in their checking accounts. So how do we get them to take that cash and invest it into savings products? So what we did was based on our first party data, which is when they open an account. We created a persona for new Canadians who moved to the country recently and so on. Um, and then we tapped into first party data, which is we said if anyone's recently received a deposit of, I'm making up a number, but if it's a significant deposit, say a 10,000, we'll send them an email. It's an email trigger. We'll send them an email where we'll point them towards a website or a landing page that we've created where we can educate them on sort of the best ways to invest, and without being too creepy, right? So, because I think
Yeah.
that's
Yes.
that's a concern that consumers have. So those are the first couple of steps: identifying new Canadians, to identifying a trigger, which is hey, when's the consumer most likely to invest, and sending out emails through this trigger to this landing page. Now that's the first party component of this piece. Now, once they've been on the landing page, that's where we combine this with our third party data points where we'll retarget them. So they'll come in, go on the website, sort of use the educational tools and so on. Now to sort of, if you think about the marketing funnel, which is top, middle, bottom, at this point in the journey, they're in the middle of the funnel. They're engaging with our website and our landing page. So this is where we'll retarget them with specific search ads, where we get them to open an account, provide them different options to invest the cash deposit that they have. So if we just take a step back and look at the full journey, we identified using first party data on who these customers are, when the best time is for us to reach out to them because of this deposit, and then use the magic of retargeting to target folks who've engaged with our content on the websites.
Can you speak at all to any of the success metrics that you've seen by executing that type of a strategy? Um, I mean, how has that changed things from a acquisition rate or number of signings or someone moving money into a new product, as you mentioned?
Yeah. So with this specific case, for example, the three key success metrics that we look at is acquisition, engagement, and efficiency, right? So
Mhm.
uh, using this. trigger strategy that we did that I just described, we saw a significant increase in our acquisitions. I think we grew by 3x during the same time
Wow.
last year.
Wow.
Uh, and in terms of, it was way more efficient because so if you just look at a few years ago, how we would have approached this would have been we would have gone out, just relied
Mm.
on third-party data, and reached, try to create a big net to bring in anyone we could find. So in terms of efficiency, we saw our cost per acquisition really go up because we weren't really spending so much on our marketing because we had this access to first-party data.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Uh, I think we have a couple of questions that I'm going to dive into here, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Um, so, Fahad, there's a question here that says, could you tell us what traditional channels are? What are the traditional channels that you use?
Yeah, so we still use, like I said, we still use some TV spots depending on the campaign. But what we've prioritized is for TV, we've prioritized specific events where we know that we'll get uh, sort of mass audiences at the same time. And two, we've only prioritized TV for campaign objectives where you want to reach a new audience or create mass awareness
Mm,
so that we can leverage digital to retarget them and so on. So TV is still something that we use for a lot of our campaigns, especially where there is the objective is to drive awareness, and we still use highly targeted out of home ads, right? So yeah, so I think out of home still has that. Um, it enables us to target customers in a highly localized way, right? So think
yeah,
about
yeah.
uh, a specific, if you're opening a new branch, for example, right, on the corner of, um, well, I would tell what the intersections are, but I just realized most of the audience is not from from Toronto. But so if there's a new branch that opens in a specific community, we
Mm,
still would use out of home to sort of put out billboards in that location in a more human and sort of community focused way. So I think traditional is playing a big role there as well.
okay. And there is another question here that is, can Fahad comment on how important the direct mail channel is for your overall strategy?
Yeah, I think I've had a love and hate relationship with direct mail because I think 5 years ago, a few years ago, there was so much focus on just completely digitization, complete digitization and Facebook and Instagram. Uh, but as we move back to sort of that true one-to-one marketing, where we have this opportunity to, really be hyper targeted with customers, direct mail plays a huge role. Where we can, once we have the consent from customers, once we have their information, it enables us to reach them in a in a highly targeted way. But also the only nuance that I've observed with direct mail channel now is now we have this opportunity to personalize our messaging way more than we did before.
Mhm.
So the only thing I'd say is if you want to maximize the value from a direct mail channel, it has to be what is it in it for the audience or the customer. It has to be highly specific and a net incremental value that they would have received, say, from a mass ad.
Okay, that makes sense. I have another question. It says you talked about the importance of flexible design to personalize your creative. You mentioned search. Is this option available in display? Would love to hear an example if you have done it.
Yes. So search, like you said, absolutely. There is, so much opportunity to sort of creating flexible designs. With display, yes, I think there's been a lot of traction in the last couple of years. So I'll use two examples, and these might be specific vendors that we've worked with. But there is something called DCO, which is Display Creative Optimization.
Mhm.
And we have a partner called Persado who we work with, where they're able to we work with them to create sort of flexibility in the display creative, where we sort of would give them the images and so on. and did as well as various headlines in that display creative, right? So going back to the persona example, what happens with DCO and with our vendor partner Persado is uh, they would leverage the best performing headlines. If it's if it's a thriving millennial persona, for example, they leverage a headline that's for that specific audience set. If it's a small business owner persona that we've tried to target, they sort of leverage those images and headlines based on the DCO technology that they have to be highly sort of flexible with what we show the customers.
Great. And I have two more questions, and I know we're running up on about 4 minutes. Actually, there's three more questions, and if we don't get to all of them before we move over, I'll make sure to follow up on those. But have you ever used radio with different formats and how? And then there's another one as well as geographic targeting and age demographics.
Sorry, could you repeat the second part, Beth?
Yes. Have
Radio
you
part?
ever used radio with different formats and how? And then the same person kind of added to their question saying, as well as geographic targeting and age demographics. So have you ever used those and
Yeah,
how?
yeah. So we've used radio in the past, but it's really sort of been we've evolved more towards podcasts because it enables us to target um, audiences in a more specific way. What when we've used radio is more so with specific audiences, right? So with small business owners, because we know that that audience is always on the go, always on the move. So before, and this was all pre-pandemic. Full transparency, we haven't used radio since the pandemic
Mm,
because we have these other opportunities to be deeply personalized with our messaging. And two, from what we're seeing, customers aren't, everyone's not driving their car in the morning on the same days at the same times to work anymore. So the opportunity to target folks in a specific sort of, specific time and create that scale. Because if you think about the value of radio, it in the let's just call it the pre-COVID era, it enables you to target like a mass channel. It would enable you to target a specific audience at the specific time, which we've seen that has gone down a little. So I don't know if I answered your question, but this is what I'd say.
okay. Two more questions. How does the timing work on your omni-channel marketing? Is the digital component pre-mail, mid-mail, or post-mail period? Or does everything run in tandem?
Everything runs in tandem, and with the line of business that I focus on, it's kind of seasonal as well, right? Because if you think about um, customers, we make money, they save all year, but then there's specific months in the year when they're saving more. So for example, one big opportunity that we target is tax refunds, right? So it's between a specific set of months, this is when we know that customers are going to get a big deposit in their account. So when we do use digital channels, they're sort of all in tandem.
Okay, and the last question, how do you think about the consumer endpoint? Meaning, are you more focused on driving online or to a branch as their preferred activation? And does that come to life in how you build out your marketing plan?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I think it has evolved. It has evolved in the last few years. In the last few years, increasingly banks and TD, for example, has increasingly seen a shrinkage in our footprint in terms of our retail branches, with the goal of moving more people online and getting folks to be more self-serving in terms of the usage. So the call to action in a lot of our messaging is increasingly now towards acquisition and online appointment bookings versus driving them into branches. But we can't lose sight of the fact, well, of two things. One, advice is still fundamental. The reason why someone's still coming to a bigger bank versus a digital only bank is the people that we offer and the advice that we offer. So making sure that while we're driving people towards digital and sort of digital appointment bookings or digital account openings, making sure that we're not losing sight of advice, and our advice is being elevated to that level as well, so that we can provide the same level of advice on digital channels. So that's key for this approach to work well.
Fantastic. Fahad, always a pleasure. Always a
Yeah.
pleasure. Thank you so much for your insight and sharing information today. I think that we're up on time and turning it back over to Vito, correct?
Yes. Hi, guys. Thank you so much for that riveting conversation. I think there's a lot to digest there. And you kind of started and ended in the same place about talking about, omnichannel and the seamless integration at every touch point. So it's not only about the digital footprint, but it's also about those personal experiences in the branch, and that they have that same experience both digitally and physically. And then again, just looking at your personas and how you're rooting that in insights, and really deepening your designing that allows for personalization, which is really an interesting, again, very, very crucial in today's world. And everyone wants you to be, giving them a value add and understanding that you understand them. So that personalization is key. So lots to think about. I think everyone's going to walk away with a lot of insights. And I just wanted to thank both of you again for a great conversation.
Of course.
Right.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much.
Bye.
You guys.
Bye.